Please subscribe and like the video before continuing. Pattie Boyd breaks her silence on her marriages to George Harrison and Eric Clapton. Pattie Boyd, the woman who inspired some of the greatest love songs in rock history, has finally broken her silence. For decades, her name has been linked to two of the most legendary musicians of all time, George Harrison of the Beatles and Eric Clapton. Now, at last, she's opening up about the love, heartbreak, and complicated emotions that defined her extraordinary life. In her latest interview, Boyd speaks candidly about what it was really like to be at the heart of two of the most talked-about romances in music history. Her words are raw, reflective, and filled with the wisdom that only comes from a life lived in the eye of the storm. Born in 1944 in Somerset, England, Pattie Boyd never imagined she would one day become the muse for timeless classics like Something, Layla, and Wonderful Tonight. She was just a shy, beautiful model when she first met George Harrison on the set of the Beatles' film A Hard Day's Night in 1964. Harrison, the quiet Beatle, was immediately smitten. Pattie later recalled, "He was so gentle, so sweet, and there was something almost spiritual about him. I had never met anyone like George before." The two began dating and married in January 1966, a glamorous yet surprisingly private affair for a Beatle at the height of his fame. For a time, their love seemed like a fairy tale. They lived at Kinfauns, their psychedelic home in Surrey, surrounded by art, music, and friends from the world's biggest band. But behind the beautiful photographs and magazine spreads, cracks began to form. Boyd has now admitted that life as Mrs. George Harrison was far from easy. "There were times when I felt invisible," she confessed. "The Beatles' world was so all-consuming that I often felt like a bystander in my own marriage." The couple's relationship began to change as George became increasingly spiritual. His devotion to Eastern philosophy and meditation took him to India, and Pattie tried to follow him on that path. But the distance between them only grew. George was searching for something deeper, something beyond this world, she explained. But in doing so, he started to drift away from the people who loved him most. Then came Eric Clapton. George's close friend, a guitar god in his own right, found himself falling hopelessly in love with Boyd. It was a love so powerful that Clapton poured his obsession into the song Layla, a haunting masterpiece inspired. Please subscribe and like the video before continuing. By an ancient Persian love story about a man who falls in love with a woman he can never have. Pattie recalled how it felt when she first heard it. "I was shocked," she said. "I realized instantly that it was about me." The emotion in that song was so raw, so desperate, it was both flattering and frightening. While George and Eric's friendship remained strangely intact, the love triangle became one of rock's most legendary tales. Boyd found herself torn between two musical geniuses, both of whom loved her deeply in their own ways. Eventually, her marriage to Harrison collapsed under the weight of fame, spiritual distance, and infidelity. There were rumors of affairs on both sides, including George's involvement with Ringo Starr's wife, Maureen. "That was the final blow," Pattie admitted. "I remember feeling that my heart had simply had enough." In 1974, Boyd left George Harrison. Not long after, she began a relationship with Clapton, who had been waiting, sometimes obsessively, for his chance. Their love burned with intensity, and for a while, it seemed like a storybook ending. Clapton even wrote Wonderful Tonight for her, capturing the quiet tenderness of their evenings together. "It was beautiful," Pattie said softly. "He would watch me get ready, and then he'd sing that song. It made me feel adored." Yet beneath the romantic surface, their marriage was far from perfect. Clapton was struggling with addiction and the pressures of fame. His drinking and erratic behavior took a toll on both of them. "I thought I could help him, that love could save him," she confessed. But addiction is something bigger than love. It takes over everything. Despite their shared history and deep affection, Boyd and Clapton's marriage eventually crumbled. "We were two broken souls trying to fix each other," she said. "But in the end, we just caused more pain." The two divorced in 1989, ending nearly 2 decades of emotional entanglement between her and the two legendary musicians. Looking back now, Boyd doesn't speak with bitterness but with a quiet acceptance. "I love them both," she said. "They were brilliant, flawed, passionate men who changed the world with their music. But they were also human. They hurt, they made mistakes, and so did I." In her book Wonderful Today, Boyd delves even deeper into her past, describing the intense highs and lows of her life as rock's most famous muse. From traveling with the Beatles to attending concerts where Clapton bared his soul on stage for her. She has lived through moments that most could only dream of. Yet please subscribe and like the video before continuing. Reflections today are strikingly grounded. "I think people often imagine that being loved by a rock star is glamorous," she said. "But love, no matter who you are, is complicated. There's jealousy, insecurity, loneliness. It doesn't disappear because you're famous." When asked if she regrets anything, Boyd pauses. "No," she says at last. "Everything that happened led me to where I am now. I wouldn't change a thing." The story of Pattie Boyd, George Harrison, and Eric Clapton remains one of the most fascinating love stories in music history, a tangled web of devotion, betrayal, and artistry that produced some of rock's greatest masterpieces. Something, George's timeless love song for Boyd, remains one of the Beatles' most beloved tracks. Even Paul McCartney once called it the best song George ever wrote. Meanwhile, Clapton's Layla stands as one of the most iconic declarations of love and anguish ever recorded. Boyd has lived long enough to see herself immortalized in melody and lyric, her name forever woven into the fabric of music history. Yet, for her, the fame that came with it was a double-edged sword. "It's strange," she mused. "To be both a person and a symbol at the same time. People saw me as this muse, but they forgot that I was a real woman with real feelings." Over the years, Boyd has turned her attention toward art and photography, finding peace and purpose in creative expression. Her photographs, many of which capture rare behind-the-scenes moments with the Beatles and other stars, reveal a woman who was not just a bystander but an observer of history. "Photography saved me," she revealed. "It gave me a voice, a way to tell my story on my own terms." Boyd's new reflections have reignited public fascination with her story. Fans are once again captivated by the woman who inspired so much art, love, and heartache. Yet what stands out most in her words today is a sense of closure. "I've forgiven the past," she said simply. "George and Eric will always be a part of my life, but I've found peace. That's what matters now." In an age of fleeting fame, Pattie Boyd's story endures, a timeless reminder of how love can shape art, and how art, in turn, can define a lifetime. Her honesty in breaking her silence is not just a confession but a reflection of resilience. "Life isn't about holding on to pain," she concluded. "It's about learning from it, loving despite it, and letting it make you stronger." For the woman behind Something, Layla, and Wonderful Tonight, those words may just be her greatest legacy of all. Please subscribe and like the video before continuing.